Hello, everybody, and welcome to this latest in the ValuesJam Deep Dive Conversation series. And we've got a fantastic value to talk about this month. It's the value of happiness. So, what a joyful conversation that looks like it will be. So, to start with, Kath, Elia, and Jenny, I'd like us just to spend a minute, and I'll put it on timer, for you to connect with this value of happiness by just considering times when you have been happy, or people that you've been happy with, or situations where you've observed or been part of happiness. So perhaps we could just do that to start with, and I'll let you know when your time is up. Thank you. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that. And Elia, perhaps you could now give us your introduction to the topic of happiness, please.
Would love to, and thank you, Alan, for inviting me to share some thoughts with you, Kathy, and Jenny. I'm Greek, so I will have to go back to my roots. The great Greek philosopher Aristotle, over 2,500 years ago, said the following. He said, "Happiness is the whole purpose and meaning of life, the whole aim and end of human existence." Think about that statement for a while. The importance of happiness, and for me, honestly, there is nothing more important than that, because when we are happy, the best part of ourselves shows up with our families, with our extended family, with friends, colleagues, clients, patients, and so on. And happiness is attractive. Happiness is sexy. If you've ever been around people who are like positive and happy, and they exude a certain, they exude a certain energy, it's magnetic. People are really drawn to them. And I've had the opportunity to travel the world, and I continue to do that and talk about happiness and wellness, both in Europe. Last year I spoke in Dubai, and I always start my talk by asking the audience the following question, which is this: if you were to ask any parent, regardless of ethnicity, nationality, socioeconomic status, religious affiliation, gender, what would you like for your children? What is the answer to that question? And usually I take the mic and I stick it to the audience. I just want them to be, and I go like this: happy, or happy and healthy. They might say those two things. So if that's true for our children or grandchildren or people we love the most, how much is that true for ourselves? And having spent the first half of my career as a clinical psychologist in just a full private practice, I can tell you my experience has been that far too many people, unfortunately, struggle with happiness. Now, happiness to me is a choice, but it's also a skill set. In other words, there may be some people who are more genetically or environmentally predisposed to happiness, but I think anyone can find it if they do certain things on a consistent basis. And I'm going to pound this thing for the next hour. Consistency is the key. Happy people, first of all, invest in their self-care. And people have said, well, is self-care selfish? Well, if it is, it's with a small s, not with a big S that, has negative connotations, right? John, welcome to our call. So they make wellness a priority, whether it's physical, and we only get one body. I mean, I feel like our bodies are temples in essence, and it's the only temple we're going to get. There's no other car we can take it to the dealership and come back. This is it. So as a result of that, how do we treat this temple that we've been giving in this lifetime? And it's not just what we know, which is give it some fuel, some healthy, good food. And I come from Greece. Mediterranean diet is the best in the world, the healthiest in the world. Or get deep and restful sleep and do some moderate exercise. We all know all these things. So that's on the physical domain. But what about emotionally, mentally, and spiritually? Because all of those things contribute to one's overall sense of happiness. So to me, self-care is a non-negotiable. As a matter of fact, because of the pandemic actually, as the level of stress increased, I realized that my own self-care needs to increase too, in order to take care of the people that I love the most, in my clients and so on. So happy people have certain things that they do on a consistent basis besides self-care. Self-care is at the forefront. They exhibit a tremendous sense of gratitude. And we all have heard the phrase, having an attitude of gratitude. It rhymes, it's cute, it's adorable. And when things are going well, the gratitude is endless. When our life is in alignment, I can write in a gratitude journal 3 different things every day for 365 days and never repeat myself. So that part is easy. And we also know that you cannot be in a grateful state and be depressed physiologically at the same time. Because when we're in a grateful state, the greatest drug dealer is up here. The brain releases all these beautiful chemicals that stay in our bodies for a while. But the question is, because life isn't perfect, and there's a lot of adversity, and we face crises from time to time, or certainly challenges, the question becomes, can we be grateful when things are not going our way, if you will? And I proclaim that we're all graduates from the University of Adversity. And the older you get in life, gray hair and so on, the higher the degree of adversity you have faced in your life. So that begs the question, can we be grateful in the middle of adversity? And I will go back to my one of my role models is Nelson Mandela. And his philosophy basically was, in life, either you win or you learn. In other words, there's no losing as long as we're learning something. And all of us on this panel, we've accomplished some things in our life. We've had some successes. But I promise you, the greatest lessons I've ever learned have never come from my successes. They come from what appeared at the time to be setbacks. I don't want to use the word failures because I don't believe in failures, but certainly when things did not work out. And if you figure out what the lesson is, then you're golden because you can be grateful for that. Typically, it doesn't happen while we're going through it. But it's only in retrospect when you look back and say, man, I really know why that happened to me. Wow. At the time, I thought it was the worst thing that can happen, but look what has happened as a result of that if we learn the lesson. So I think that's a big component of happy people. The other one has to do with forgiveness. And Gandhi once said that forgiveness is the attribute of the strong. Well, I would add to that is that forgiveness equals freedom. And even if the person we need to forgive doesn't know about it, we don't even have to talk to them necessarily, depending on what kind of trauma we suffered and so on. But forgiveness is for us. Forgiveness equals freedom. And the most important thing of forgiveness, of course, is self-forgiveness, which I believe is the ultimate act of self-compassion. In my experience, having worked with so many patients and thousands of people over the last 35 years and so on, is that people really struggle with self-forgiveness. They don't know how to do it. And I have a process that I take people through it, because self-forgiveness really, if you don't do that, it's going to rob you of your happiness. There's no way you can carry, all this dead weight, as I call it, and find happiness. The other part is, of course, is how do we feed our spiritual self? Because I do believe that's a significant component. So whether that means, we pray, we meditate, we practice mindfulness, whatever we need to do to get quiet and find that inner peace within ourselves, that definitely contributes to happiness. Also, happy people they know their purpose in life and they live it, because it's not enough to know something, and they live it, right? So if, for me, I learned that really early on in my life, and I'm very fortunate, and my purpose is to leave this world a better place than I found it, as like a big statement, and then how it shows up specifically, is another matter. So live your purpose. And happy people, they tend to perform acts of kindness all the time, and it's natural because their own batteries are full. And we know what happened. Like, happy people do that anyways. When we perform acts of kindness, on the other hand, something happens again in our brains, and we get those chemicals released. So to me, kindness and happiness are interconnected and interrelated. I don't think you can have one without the other. Now, having said all that stuff about happiness, the last thing I want to share is relationships. So let's say we do all these things: self-forgiveness, gratitude, kindness, self-care, and so on. But if you surround yourself with toxic people and you have toxic relationships in your life, unfortunately, it can wipe out most of the good work that you've done anywhere else. So for me, relationships are key, and I can brag a little bit, but I made a conscious decision 20 years ago to eliminate toxic relationships from my life. And it's not like they haven't come in over the course of the last 20 years, but I really don't have toxic relationships in my life. And I have a very quick process that I share with people, and it's not that hard, believe it or not. And if we have time, we can talk about it later on. But I think our relationships, if they're loving, they're kind, we're connecting, and you add all the other stuff that we talked about, man, you live a great life. So those are my thoughts, and we can get started.
That's a brilliant introduction, Elia. You've covered so much ground in a really short period of time, which I'm sure has given people a lot to think about. And I think this leads into the question very nicely, actually, because the first question is this. And before I ask it, just to say, don't feel in a rush to respond, please. Just when you hear the question, play with it. If you feel any emotions rising, just be curious about what those emotions are initially before you're tempted to say something. But then when you're ready, please feel free to say whatever it is that you want to. So the question is this, what is the essence of happiness? And second part of the question, in a world which is so frantic and chaotic, how can it be achieved?
I'll answer if it's okay. And I'm so glad you mentioned about toxic people because I myself have very few toxic people. But the reason I was late, I was talking to somebody about her toxic relationship with the woman she's working for, who's quitting at the end of the month. Thank God. And I work with her part time, and I had toxic. Oh my God, I feel bad for everybody who has to work with toxic people. Ugh. So, but we're not toxic. So, what's happiness and what's the essence of it, and how do you achieve it? Well, I love the word happiness, and I'm definitely I aspire to be happy, but I also think when I think of happy, it's like like women I don't like gold retrievers. I don't like, but they're happy dogs. Happy dogs. They're like kind of clueless. They're like But I know that's the superficial. But where I like to say feel good, I want to feel good, and that to me means happy. If I'm feeling good, I'm a happy person. And so the essence of happiness for me, I guess, is how do you feel good being you 24/7? So no matter what you're doing, are you feeling good about yourself? Um, and I came to that because when I was working jobs I didn't enjoy, um, I didn't feel good, but I was like, how do I feel good? And even when I'm depressed, how do I feel good when I'm depressed? And I find ways to be grateful because then it moves the depression not so low. And how do I achieve it is how do people achieve it is really it's a choice. We had a conversation the other day about gratitude, and we were talking like, is it a choice? You have to choose to be grateful. If you choose to be grateful, you choose to be happy. That is the first step. But making those choices requires a lot of, um, you know, I hate the word discipline, but a lot of, self work to make those choices, awareness. And ultimately, um, just relax, find a way to relax in the present moment. Because if you can, one of my, everywhere written down, relax and enjoy, Joanne, relax and enjoy, just relax and enjoy. Because if you can relax and enjoy the moment, that's where your feel good experience will achieve happiness. So that's my definition of happiness. And I love the Charlie Brown song, Happiness is three kinds of ice cream, da 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 da. So, yeah, so I'm not opposed to happiness. And I would love to also, we don't talk about this now, but I'd love to actually, what kind of advice can you give people who aren't able to quit a job and they have to maintain that toxic interaction with somebody? I mean, again, I'd love to have another sidebar conversation.
I'd be happy to share with you how that works, but yeah, but Janie and Kath, thoughts?
Yeah, I'm happy to share it. So in thinking about, what is the essence of happiness, and I think it can be different for different people, and I think it's important. Self-awareness is important to know what it is for you, and so Ellie, as you pointed out about having knowing your purpose, right? So that's part of that. For me, before we even started speaking about this, two of the elements that were so crucial for happiness for me were gratitude and kindness. And so I know for me, if I'm in a space where I'm witnessing kindness, I am experiencing kindness, I am seeing the ripple effect and the impact. I mean, that's part of my purpose. That brings a lot of happiness for me. And with the gratitude as well, I think about times that I have been ridiculously happy and almost not even knowing, like your cup is so overflowing and you don't even know what to do with it. And I wish it was more, more frequent, but I have had those moments. And to me, it's like an awareness that this happiness, this gratitude for what is, just flowing into what I would call a gratitude reservoir. And so when times come that are lean and I'm struggling and there seems to be a lot less to be happy about or grateful for, that I can tap into or dip my toes in those waters. And gratitude really helps me to, in those difficult times, if I can look for the little things to be grateful for, and the little things aren't necessarily little. I mean, it's the fact that I woke up, or I'm breathing and I can breathe with ease and I don't have a respirator, or I don't have, I can walk without pain, or just all of those types of things. It helps to get through those times what might seem a little bit unhappy. And if I can be grateful for, if I'm going through a loss of something where there might be a lot of unhappiness, but if I can focus on that gratitude and think about the blessings of what have been rather than what I may be losing, it just turns things around entirely. So those are part of the elements for me around happiness. And Ellen, as you asked about, in a world that's so frantic and chaotic, I can't even imagine a time in history that it's been this way. How can we achieve it? And I think about the most wonderful TED Talk I've ever seen is DeWitt Jones and Celebrate What's Right with the World. And he was a National Geographic photographer. And times when I start thinking about all I see on the news is darkness and sadness and unkindness and hatred and war and all and the craziness going on here in the US with mass shootings and all that. Really trying to focus on changing my lens and how I view things, and looking for the good, looking for the kind stories, looking for the human compassion and things to lift me up, and to be able to share those really makes a big difference, I think, in getting through these chaotic times, and then finding like-minded spirits and kindred spirits to join in together to work to make that difference in the world. So just a few thoughts there.
Thanks, Jenny.
And if I may add to what loved what you said, Jenny. And this is a little bit counterintuitive. If I find myself, and for the most part, I've always been this way. It's been a natural gift. My wife's like, "How can you be so happy all the time?" Like that's how I've been, you know. But of course, you know, there are down days. I have found the times that I'm like kind of like down, either down on myself or you know, just not in a good place. You would think that I would say to myself, you got to practice more self-care. Actually, it's the other way around. I try to get outside of myself and go serve somebody else. Take the focus off, like, you know, the poor me or whatever, and do something good for somebody else. Because there's, no matter what's happening in our own personal lives, I promise you, there's somebody else worse off than you are. I guarantee that. All you got to do is look. And when you do that, again, something happens when we serve somebody else, even when we're not in the best state. And I've had opportunities to serve left and right. Oftentimes, I'd be even kind of like cranky on the way to a service project. Like, I really don't want to do that. But when you're coming back after you've done that, and of course, especially if it's collective with other people, you have this beautiful sense of like, man, life is good. I did something good today for somebody else. So I know that goes a little bit counter to what I said about self-care being the primary thing, but sometimes it's forgetting ourselves to go serve somebody else and watch what happens.
Where are you at with this, Kath?
Yeah, lots of pondering. In December, a colleague of mine wrote a blog around New Year's resolutions, and often that's New Year, new me, and big overwhelming dreams that we want to go. So really keen not to focus on New Year's resolutions. So she wrote a blog, and she'd asked 10 questions for gentle reflection. And with International Day of Happiness coming up, I'd written a blog answering these questions yesterday, so it's been very much on my mind. So I think one of the questions was around what the essence of happiness. But Amy had posted a question around what was the happiest time in the last 12 months. And it makes me think about the big stuff, the delightful things, the things that brings me the most joy. And for me, it'll probably be in a field, listening to great music, you know, dancing with people. And I think there's something more than just the music or the gig or the event. It's that I'm usually with people I love, good company, but it's that sense of belonging with, you know, people who are other fans, and you're all of the same tribe and you're enjoying that space together. So there's that, is the happiness of the big moment, I guess. But that feeling doesn't stay, does it? But I think it's that measure of the level of contentment with the world that is the thing that fills my cup, I guess. So there's spikes of happiness of, you know, and that could be, when I were unpicking, that could be a big thing of the gig, or it could just be, good news story that I follow on Instagram because they post good things of what people do around the world, and it's nice. And that makes me smile and makes me happy. Or it could be, my daughter did birthday card, but she wrote lots of appreciations on the envelope. So I'm using that as a bookmark because that'll remind me of the nice things. So I think this your spikes of endorphins, you know, and you feel good hormones, and that could be your happiness measures. But it's when you don't have them, but you have a good overall level of contentment, and is that through living your values and where your values align with the stuff that you do for your work and your purpose? And I know we've talked a lot about that And I was really interested to think about, in a world so frantic, how can it be achieved? And that's really tough, isn't it? And I guess it depends on the person, on the situation, on the stuff going on. And I try and think, well, what is within my circle of influence? So I can be a good listener. I could, find my moments of joy within my space of the world. There are things that I can't affect or I can't change, but I could do good in other ways. So I think about what's within my circle of influence of that. But I really like what you said around you go and help other people, Elliot. And I think I was gonna say Camarados are an organisation over here. So I'm in England, in Lancashire. I think Camarados has some stuff going on in America, Baltimore, I'm sure. So Camarados are an organisation that it's about being human alongside each other, and they have some ground rules, values that they live by. And one is it's all right to be a bit rubbish sometimes. It's all right to disagree. But one of them is ask somebody to help you. And it's that act of supporting other people with their purpose, and you ask a favour, and it just brings that reciprocal relationship together, and I really like that.
Thanks, Kath. And you've all touched on a number of similar things and also a number of different things actually, and I'm just trying to pick through because it's prompted quite a number of different thoughts, but there seems to be a theme of contradiction actually in my thoughts, which is interesting. So I'll touch on those. The first thing, I think, Joanne, you talked about happiness, all this rah-rah woo-woo sort of stuff. And it made me think of happiness, if you personify happiness. I thought of what you described as being the social media account version. And then what was described around contentment by Kath as being the real person. And so there's this kind of disconnect between how happiness might be portrayed, fancy, versus the really authentic, simpler version, which might not sound as exciting, but actually is more valuable. So that came through. The first contradiction was around comparisons, because on the one hand, I think we are unhappy when we're constantly comparing ourselves against somebody that we think is better or has got more and all of that sort of stuff. So I started to think, no comparisons. But then I agree with I think Elia said this, when you're not feeling so good, just have a think about the people that are worse off than you. And that's absolutely true. And I do that to practice gratitude. I'm really thankful for what I've got. So that contradicts this no comparisons thing. So it's like no comparisons upwards, but comparisons kind of downwards, if you like, to make you feel a bit better. And then another contradiction was around how we hold ourselves and our self-view, I suppose. On the one hand, I started to think about how I'm really happy when I realize how small and insignificant I am. So, in the middle of a big landscape, for instance, where you're just in awe of how big everything is, and you're just a little speck on this planet. But then equally, I was thinking, well, so for instance, I'm involved in a project at the moment, which is called Voice of Tomorrow, where we're inviting people under 25 to express their hopes and fears and vision of the future. And we're going to display that in a virtual exhibition. And our ambition is to use AI to translate the sentiment in the artwork, to convert it into data, so that those people responsible for designing the society of the future can design it with the wants and needs of our future citizens in mind. And so we had a call about this the other day, and somebody was like, "Oh, this is so exciting! It's such an ambitious project." So that's not being small and insignificant. That's kind of playing big. So another contradiction there. And then just finally, oh, sorry, two things. One little thing to finish. So shared experiences has come through. This thing about when I was thinking about the times that I've been happiest, it's been with other people rather than on my own. And who said about choose which lens you have? Who was that? That was Jenny, was it? Right. So Jenny, I've got this idea, and if any of you want to take it away, maybe Joanne would be the person to make this into a reality. Imagine designer happy glasses. So I'll leave you with that one. And then Elia, it would be great now to hear your reflections on how the conversation's gone.
Yeah, glad to. And I have a couple of thoughts. One of them has to do with comparisons. And I talk about that all the time. Comparisons are deadly. The only comparison that actually matters is the one within ourselves. So let's take physical health. Let's take our let's say weight. The New Year's resolutions, by the way, are always the same. They keep repeating themselves year after year after year, which means they're not effective. And it's usually like, I want to get in shape, I want to lose some weight. So let's take the weight, for example, because that's easy. We can measure that. The only thing that matters is how am I doing as compared to where I was 6 months ago, last year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And if I'm actually doing better, if I'm in better shape, pat ourselves on the back, be grateful for it, and say, hey, we're on the right path. If, however, let's say I'm been more stressed this year and haven't had enough time to exercise and I'm not eating very healthy and so on, and my physical health is going down, the next step is, first of all, not to judge ourselves, but to say, what am I willing to do about it? Because I know this will contribute to my overall well-being. And that's it. And then formulate a plan and do it. So I don't believe in New Year's resolutions. Although somebody asked me, because my birthday is in January, what's your, not resolution, what's your goal for this year? I'm going to come back to what you said, Alan. My goal is to spend as much time as I can with the people that I love the most. That's the only goal that I have for this year. Big goal. That's it. Because if I do that, like you said, my life is going to be happy. If I'm spending quality time with the people that I love the most and sharing that, that's more than enough. So that, that's my thought about, comparisons. I just think they're deadly and meaningless. But if we look at ourselves with honesty and kindness and compassion, because far too often, I think we look at ourselves, especially with things, let's say I'm not as well as I used to be a year ago or 5 years ago, and we beat ourselves up. Well, that's not the point. The point is, will it move me into action? Right?
Yeah.
And not perfection. I don't believe in perfection. There are perfect moments in life, those spikes that Kath talked about. Yeah. And there's certain moments, the birth of your first child or grandchild or whatever, or the sunset in Santorini or Maui, these perfect moments, right? But they're elusive. They don't stay. So when that does happen, let's be as grateful as we can. Hopefully they'll come back again. But there's no such thing as perfection. I think, and I'm a recovering perfectionist. If there was like a 12-step program like Alcoholics Anonymous, it'd be like, my name is Ilya and I'm a recovering perfectionist. So, and I know addictions pretty well. My dissertation actually was on Alcoholics Anonymous, as it turns out. So yeah, perfection is elusive. Perfect moments, yes. But it's more about consistency and improvement. And the other thing is that I think in life, it doesn't matter what we know, honestly. What really matters is what do we do with what we know? Because we all know, we all know what we're supposed to do, how we're supposed to eat, sleep, exercise. That doesn't matter. What matters is what do we do about it? And can we do it on a consistent basis? And then if we do, then we're going to have a pretty good life. Mm-hmm. Oh, one more thing. It turns out for those of you that are from the UK, this is coming from you. So during the pandemic, I guess there was a study that had to do with laughter and being lighthearted that came out. And listen to what they discovered, that if human beings laugh an hour a day, I mean, not one straight hour a day, but throughout the day for 1 hour cumulatively, the happy chemicals that are released in our brain, in our bodies, stay for 24 hours. I think about that. Like, so I know now there are groups that are teaching people how to laugh, basically. But this is, again, the low-hanging fruit. If we can find the lighter side of life and have a sense of humor, even towards ourselves, and take ourselves lightly, then we're going to have a pretty good life,
Yeah.
So,
Elliot, on that, I was talking to a guy recently. I can't remember his surname, Dr. Pete something. And he shared a stat with me that I can't remember either, but I'll be able to give you the gist, which was about the number of times that a child laughs compared to the number of times that an adult laughs. And it's just so scary. It's like, what have people done to us when we get a bit older? Something that we haven't touched on actually
wait,
is,
by the way, was that Dr. Peter Alexander?
yes, that's
Yeah,
right.
he's a good friend. He's fantastic, actually. Yes,
Oh,
Dr. Peter.
there you go. 300 for children and 7 to 10 for adults. Isn't that crazy? Thank you, Joanne. The thing that we haven't touched on actually is this. There does seem to be a sense generally out there that happiness is something to be strived for and an end goal. And I just think that's the biggest mistake anybody can make because it's not. It's a bit of a cliche, but it is the journey rather than the destination, right? And it's like we've kind of all agreed, I think, that it's our choice. So, if I'm doing the dishes or if I'm weeding the garden, I remind myself how lucky I am to be doing whatever I'm doing, and I do it really well. I just try and do it as best as I can. And that gives a great sense of maybe not happiness, but contentment, which we've talked about as being the kind of more modest, authentic version of happiness. So just throw that in there because nobody's mentioned that yet. Okay. And
Alan, can I just add to that, because this is kind of related, thinking about, as you're talking about having presence of mind to focus on, I'm really lucky to be doing this, or, this is kind of my happy place. And I think one of the things that's key too is to be aware of when we're happy and not just let the moment, go by, but soak it in. I mean, just feel it, embody it, get it just kind of so that we can recall it. We can think about it later, maybe in a time that's not so happy. And if we're really paying attention to those moments, those magical moments of happiness, then I think we may become aware that we actually do have them more frequently than we might think. And I don't know, I just think it's important to really be aware of, appreciate them in the moment, and just soak it in while you have it.
that's a brilliant comment, Jenny. And some of you won't know, but my background is commercial hospitality management, and it was through the food and beverage piece of that. So I'm really interested and fond of gastronomy and fine wines. And what you've just described, Jenny, it reminded me of when you're in a really top premium restaurant and you've got fantastic wine, you don't just shovel it down, right? You kind of sip the glass of wine and you savor it and how does that taste? And you really enjoy it. Whereas, like you say, sometimes in our lives, we just run through it, forget it, and it's done, right? And you wouldn't do that. So I'm thinking to make this equation between our day-to-day life and experience it as if you would a gourmet meal. That's going to probably help me be more present, actually. So thank you.
You know what's really interesting about that? So we live like 7 months out of the year now in Colorado, and the other 4 or 5 months in Greece/Europe with my wife. Now that the kids are gone and so on, is how we eat. It's really interesting that you brought this up. And when I'm in the United States, I eat within 5 minutes. I'm done with my plate. I mean, I eat fast and unhealthy, and I know it. When we go to Greece, And there's a whole different, you go to a taverna or a restaurant and you will sit there for like 2 or 3 hours, you know. And the first 2 or 3 days, I'm like scarfing the food down because I'm still in American mode. And people are like, relax, take it easy. Nobody brings you the bill. You just stay there and you talk and you connect and you break bread together with people. And it's beautiful. And it's like, it reminds me that we don't have to rush through things.
Yeah.
In our society here, I think Europeans are much, much better than we are here in the United States, by far, when it comes to that. And there's a ritual, the food, the drinks, the connection, the laughter, all that stuff contributes to a quality of life that's beautiful. And unfortunately, in the US, we're like fast food, rush, 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 go on to the next thing. So we have much to learn on this side of the Atlantic from the old continent, for sure.
And do you think there's something there about our approach to life seems to often be driven almost by a machine-like tendency where we're trying to increase our capacity. We're trying to do things as fast and as efficient as possible so we can do more and all of that sort of stuff. But what that's kind of ignoring is the quality of what we're doing and the degree to which we're savoring it, which is a lot more difficult to quantify. And there's a friend of mine, she talks about slowing down, and she's very, very conscious about it. So, for instance, the other day, she took about 3 days to answer an email. And at the beginning, she said, I'm not apologizing, I'm just slowing down, and I've chosen to write this now. And that's great. So that's another dimension as well. So for the last, to close this down then, the final question I'd like to ask you, and this, somebody mentioned that it's World Happiness Day coming up soon, then next week, a week today actually, isn't it? So what I'd like to know from this conversation that we've had today, what are you each encouraged to do differently about happiness?
I can go first, and something that I learned, today, even as as a happiness expert, there's still so much more to learn. Like Socrates said, the only thing I know is how much I don't know. Is something that Jenny reminded us of. When we are in a contented state, when we are happy, to be consciously aware of it in the midst of it. Because a lot of times we're not. We're just like we go from one thing to another. So I think to sit, to just to sit and take it all in as deep as you can to the depths of your soul. I think it's actually really, really important. And because I go really fast sometimes I need to remind myself, like, slow down and take it all in. It's like, wow, how fortunate, how blessed, how lucky, So I think I think that's what I'm going to do different, or just adds to the repertoire of happiness habits. So thank you, Jenny.
And Elia, it sounds like you've got the conditions locally to encourage you to do that over the next 24 hours.
Yes, I mean, I do. I do. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Great.
Well, one more thing that I want to say that I think Joanne brought this up has to do with locus of control. Like in life, recognize what's within your control and what truly is outside of your control. And kind of let go of that stuff. Don't try to control the whole universe. Like, what do I control? I control my sphere of influence, like you said. I control my attitude towards things, how I respond to certain things. I do have some control over things, not everything. And that actually, I think, contributes to our sense of happiness too.
So who would like to go next about what you are encouraged to do differently about happiness as a result of this conversation today? Kath.
Kat, you want to go first?
Okay, I can. Thank you. Yeah, I'm just to pay attention, like Jenny said, to recognize those moments and really pay attention to that, and really lean into that space. But I was just looking through my pad, and I was on a coaching call earlier on, and we were thinking about the controllables. So the things in our life that we can control and the things that we can't. And the things that we can't control, sometimes you can pay attention to them. So you might not be able to control your sleep, but you can pay attention to having good sleep hygiene or working towards that. So, so yeah, I think it's, again, going back to that circle of influence, paying attention to the things I can control and that I can be mindful around, and yeah, the things that bring me joy, and paying attention to that sort of stuff.
And Kath, is there anything that comes to mind for you specifically? So if you were to take that general principle that you've just described and you were to apply it to your life now and in the very near future, how could you put it into practice?
I think that's always comes down to relationships. Yeah, and spending time with people that you really love, people that fill your cup.
Okay, and do you have the chance to do that in the coming
Yeah. Yeah, and making sure I do that without weeks flying by.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. And Joanne?
So I love when I come to these calls because I really appreciate meeting other people who see the value in talking about being happy and love. And I actually wrote down, I think happy and love are kind of the same in the sense that there are so many definitions for both of them. Love has, it's like, and I'm going to look into that a little bit more, like what is happy and love? Because we're here to love, we're here to be happy. I think it's the same, those kind of line up with each other. But what I'm going to do to maintain a level of happiness in my life is to find ways to be happy about trying to market my services as a positive energy artist and a creative wellness experience to people in Savannah and beyond. It's so frustrating. I'm always frustrated. I'm good, and I don't, and I know that frustration also is part of the resistance to it's blocking me. So I love that saying, what if it was easy? Well, what if I was happy processing and figuring out, I hate the word figuring, processing and working on the marketing and, the contacts and reaching out, because who doesn't want to talk about being happy with other people? So when I talk to people, talk about being happy. Are you and your team happy? If not, let's do some things. So, because I get really frustrated and depressed when it's doing that. So to me, that's my choice to stay in a happy place when I'm working on my business.
And Joanne, there's two things that makes me happy. One is marketing, and two is working with other people. So, and I won't be offended if you don't want to take me up on this. Here's an offer that when you've had some thinking, we have a call to bounce around some ideas from what you've put together in the first place.
Anytime. I'm gonna let you give service to me because I really liked what you said, Kath. It's so important to let people give to you so that they get to receive the good feeling. So I'm gonna schedule a call with you. After this call, I'll send you a link. I would love that. Thank you for that opportunity.
Okay. Jenny.
Yeah, I think I'm going to challenge myself to take this little awareness thing a bit deeper. And, I think I do a good job of in the moment, feeling gratitude and being aware of, how I'm feeling and what's special about the moment. And, but I'm not so great about recording it. My gratitude journal is hit and miss. My little joy jar that's up on my, my bedroom that I'm supposed to be telling myself I'm going to write every day something is really empty. And it doesn't mean that there hasn't been a lot of joyful moments. And so I think I'm going to take that awareness piece and record it more and capture it so my aging mind doesn't forget about them. Or if I'm on a call and somebody like Alan says, think about times that you've been really, really happy. I want them to come to mind just quickly. And if they don't, and if I'm in a dark place, I want to get to where I can just read about it and remember about them. And I just think about how that happiness and the gratitude moments are so interconnected. Maybe that I'm just, there's a little star that I put on when I'm especially just feeling overwhelmed with happiness or just in a really happy frame of mind. And I keep those two together because they are so interconnected. But I'm going to be a much better recorder, at least for the next couple of weeks. Maybe long enough to get it into a habit. I won't commit to it for the rest of my life because I don't want to set myself up. But yeah. And Alan, you can be my accountability partner if you know that.
That's the deal.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jenny. So mine might sound a bit weird, but I really like this idea of happy glasses as you're choosing the lens. So my partner's daughter is a very creative, artistic girl. And so I'm going to invite her to make me a pair of happy glasses and see what they look like. And I'm looking forward to seeing what she comes up with if she accepts the offer and the invitation. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'm really excited by the idea because I'm still kind of very childish at heart. So thank you all for giving me that inspiration. And Elliot, in the last minute or so that we've got before we close the call, could I ask you just to close in ever which way you would like?
First of all, thank you, Alan, for this. It's really intimate. I love the fact that, because I'm used to like large stages and lots of people and so on. This is actually, I forgot how beautiful it is when it's a smaller group and you can actually speak and listen and learn and this back and forth. So beautiful setting. You did a marvelous job facilitating this group. So thank you, Alan, for the invitation. And on the chat room, I'd love to connect with those that I'm not connected with in this group. So reach out and that would be lovely. No, I guess my call to action would be for everyone, not for the 5 of us here on this call, but for everyone else listening is, do not procrastinate your happiness. Simply. And I think the pandemic really fast forwarded this process, even for me and for many other people. Most of us live life with when. In other words, when I'm in the right relationship, when I get married, when I have the right job, when I get the raise, when I have kids, when the kids grow up, when the kids get married, when I'm retired. Forget all the whens, because life is fragile, life is short, and life is unpredictable. So live your best life now and do not procrastinate your happiness. That's it.
Well, what a very instructive note to end our session on, but wise words all the same. So guys, I trust you've enjoyed it. Elia, thank you so much for joining us with the experience you have on the topic, and enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. I hope it's going to be a happy one.
Hey, Alan, I had an idea about the glasses, just really
Oh,
quick.
go on.
What if you just made like my happy glasses? My happy glasses are on. What if you just like, these are my happy, I love the idea of making them, but even you just said, let's put on our happy glasses. See, we're happy.
And building on that, Joanne, I've got an idea that if you write happy on one of your fingers
Oh yeah.
and glasses on the other one, there you
Yeah,
go.
happy glasses. Yeah.
Actually, that's what I envisioned too. When you said that, that's what I saw. I saw happy glasses, and people were like, "Whoa, what's that? I'm wearing my happy glasses." That would be a tremendous hit. I think you can merchandise the heck out of that.
Yeah. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thank you all.